Now we're almost at the end of looking through this chapter, Exodus chapter 16, but there are some important things at the end of the chapter. In particular, this video is the preservation of the manna. But we read from verse 31, and the house of Israel called his name Manna, which literally is what, or what is it? It was like white coriander seed, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. It's verse 32 and 33 when we look at. Then Moses said, "This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Fill an omer with it to be kept for generations, that they may see the bread which I fed you in the wilderness when I brought you out of the land of Egypt." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Take a pot and put an omer of manna in it, and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for the generations." As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. Here we see that the manna was to be preserved, as it says here in verse 32, to be kept for generations to come. And of course, we know that the manna from John chapter 6 has been mentioned this each time, reminds us of the person of Jesus Christ. And therefore, when we apply this to the Lord Jesus, we think how the truths about the Christ have been preserved for future generations. In fact, when we think about this, we go to the New Testament, Luke chapter 24. Of course, this chapter deals with the resurrection of Christ from Luke's perspective, and it's the Emmaus Road, verse 13. We don't know their names. We know one of them was Cleophas, verse 18. Remember, verse 14, they talked to the things that had happened, and verse 17 sums it up. What kind of conversation is this that you have with one another as you walk and are sad? And you see there at the bottom in this Bible, it says, the original text says they stood still looking sad. And of course, we're familiar with this, that is actually the Lord Jesus who's walking with them. And of course, there are times in the Christian life where things are difficult, and sometimes that sadness shows in our face, in our walk. And the amazing thing is that the Lord Jesus actually walks with us in those difficult moments. But you notice as you go down the chapter, you're familiar with how the situation changes. When we get to verse 25, then he says to them, "O foolish ones and slow of heart to believe in all the prophets have spoken." Notice he turns their mind back to the scriptures. "Ought not the Christ to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory?" So here we see that the prophet had spoken about Christ. As verse 27, which really is the key verse in relation to the manna, which I talked about, and beginning at Moses, of course, and by Moses, I presume it's in the first 5 books of Moses, but we can think of the life of Moses, maybe the manna is referred to in this conversation, and all the prophets, he expounded in them in all the scriptures, the things concerning himself. Then we'll go down to verse 32 before we go back. "And they said one to another, Did not our heart burn within us while he talked with us on the road, and while he opened the scriptures to us?" You see, the truths about Christ have been preserved for future generations. Here is one example, verse 27, beginning at Moses and the prophets, he expounded them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. The truths about Christ have been recorded in the Old and New Testament, but of course here we're in the resurrection time, and of course referring back to the Old Testament scriptures, and the manna has been preserved. Christ has been preserved. The wonderful truths about Christ have been preserved in the scriptures. And of course the change is in verse 32, because now instead of being sad, in verse 17, we see that their hearts are burning within them, because the scriptures have been opened to them. But of course, if we turn over one more page and go to verse 44, This is what Jesus said to the disciples. These are the words which I spoke to you while I was still with you. All things must be fulfilled which are written in the law of the prophets, law of Moses, and the prophets and the Psalms concerning me. And he opened their understanding that they might comprehend the scriptures. Here we see the truths about Christ in the Old Testament, which is referred to here, and of course the New Testament is no different. The things about Christ must be fulfilled. And so the truths of Christ have been preserved, not just for the two on the Emmaus Road, but also for the disciples here and for us as Christians as well. And so the preservation of the Manna points us forward to the preservation of the wonderful truths about Christ, which have been preserved, of which we looked at two examples from Luke 24. Thank you for listening.